Or how do you want to tell the youth who have been so, badly affected by your incompetence to come along with you when they usually, when from time to time they lose their job in droves? How do you want to tell people who are being killed by bandits that you mean well for them when you have all the opportunity to mobilize the armed forces and the police to do away with this banditry? Or how do you want to tell people who are traumatized by insurgency in the northeast, who are daily being killed, who are not secured, who are usually very afraid to go out, that your government means well for them? What do you want to tell the people in southern Kaduna that are daily being killed by people suspected to be of your ethnic group? What do you want to tell people in Zamfara who cannot go out to say their early morning Muslim prayers, who even when they do venture to go out, they are at the mercy of bandits? Or even in his home state of Katsina, where district heads are kidnapped randomly with reckless abandon. I want to believe, or I want to be inclined to say that the realization came shortly after the last lockdown. And before then, actually, there has been what I want to call bottled up anger amongst the youth. And unfortunately for the current government, when it came into being, I stand to be corrected. I've not seen any kind of government that enjoys this kind of goodwill from the people. So it started on a very good foundation, but along the line, owing to several factors, all the kind of goodwill it has, so they mismanaged it. Okay, let's use the case of Alhaji Jakonde as an example that everybody can see.
Former governor of Lagos said, and one of the best tell that statement.
He will ever remain one of the best compared to the present characters we have, jumping up and down now. In those days, if it were to be now, somebody like Alhaji Jakonde wouldn't have been governor. Why? Because in those days, there were parties, and they were parties rooted in ideology. And everybody knew that UPN was a progressive socialist party. MPN was more like a conservative party and all that. So we knew where to place everyone. So in those days, if you are a member of a political party, you don't really need to spend much to get into power. It's something nobody should be very happy about. It's something that, because to me, if you give me money to vote for you, it's an insult. You are basically telling me that I don't know what I want, or I'm just a dunce who can be purchased. If you had the opportunity of being to France or any of its colonies, they are like Nigerians. All they want is that basic things of life. Don't disturb them. Just give them. They are not asking for too much. Electricity, water, job, and whatever. So if you deny them, the little you give them, they take. But those kind of society are very dangerous compared to societies that we always fight for, that we always have one reason or the other to fight for anything that they believe are
aggressive societies
and others. And I said that by the time it will come, the form it will take. But I thank God that it is there, whether we like it or not.
Are you predicting them, or do you have an insight that is going to happen, or a premonition? What do you mean?
I wouldn't say I was predicting, but I had this intuition then that it will happen. And that my belief then was that we are a people very unique. We take anything that is thrown at us. But the day you talk the core of our existence, what do I mean by the core? The real reason for existence, maybe petrol, maybe food and whatever, then we might see a spike, and that which we are seeing now. What happened initially, I don't really like to say what I want to say, but I have to say it.
You have to say it because we need orientation. We are in the era of Sorosoke now, and if you are not Sorosile, you are not making your voice. It's not good, sir.
Okay, I will Sorosoke. Since you
have to be bold, sir, please.
I have to. I should be bold.
You have to speak up.
What we have is unfortunately a cream of rascals hijacked that idea, arrogated it to themselves, now believe that they are the custodian of that philosophy and ideology. But when they got all these things, they began to do some other things that are far, 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 away from what those Baba stood for in those days.
It's another very wonderful moment today in the city of Lagos as we carry out this special broadcast. It has to do with the campaign on EndSARS, which is ongoing in Nigeria now. Today is the 10th day, going to the 11th day, that thousands upon thousands of youths across various areas, various states, cities in Nigeria are protesting the brutality of an arm of the police, which is the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. And from what is going on, especially as regards to other countries like Chile and some other European countries, it appears that Nigeria's own revolution is building up. Analysts are saying that EndSARS is a tipping point for the country Nigeria, which appears to have been docile for a long time, especially from the largest demography of the citizen, which is the youth. Today, we are privileged to meet somebody who has been very conversant with the conversation, somebody who is very conversant with the conversation. He's a philosopher, he's a public affairs analyst, a journalist. And he's a journalist of a long time, very, very versatile and very acquainted with the politics of Nigeria and especially the history of the political evolution of this country. We are meeting Mr. Olaolu Oladipo, and it's a very privileged honor meeting him somewhere in his abode in Lagos. We thank him, we thank his aid for this wonderful moment. Sir, we want to thank you for giving us this privilege to meet you, because when we called you and we told you about our intention to elaborate on the issue of EndSARS, we never knew that we were going to be so lucky this way. But first and foremost, let's meet you. And how do you feel about Nigeria now as a father and as a political thinker and as a leader in your own rights?
Well, I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to wade into what is happening in our country. To me, it's a very momentous occasion for us. And before I go into the details of my thoughts regarding what is happening, I want to introduce myself as Olaolu Oladipo, as you said in your opening remarks. I'm a journalist by training and by inclination, and I've always done journalism, especially for the past 25 years or thereabout. And like you said in your intro too, I've been reporting politics. As an academic, I have my root in history, so obviously I should be very conversant with the history of the country. I haven't done my first and second degree in history at the prestigious University of Lagos. So maybe at the risk of sounding very self-patronizing, I want to say with all these credentials, I will be more than too competent to speak on what is happening in Nigeria. Then when we want to look at the agitation is very consistent with our political evolution. What do I mean, and why do I say so? If we look at since the founding of this country, because essentially the country came into being in 1914, at different point in time, we see the youth, coming together to chart a path for the country. So what is happening now? Well, if you want to really look at it, it's not too new. But what we can actually say is that for the first time, the youths are forming consensus. And for the first time, I want to see, or I'm inclined to believe and think that for the first time, the youth really know what they want. And in trying to get what they want, they've been able to ensure that they are several steps ahead of those in the official dome, I mean those in government. So it has actually, really galvanized a kind of thinking for a nation that is trotting, that we really need to have a fresh kind of thinking, then a fresh kind of approach to the way we govern ourselves.
Let me come in there, sir, with total honor, sir, because you look at it from 1960 and you look at it that coincidentally we clocked 60 on October 1st, which is just 2 weeks away from now, 2 weeks away, that is as of today. At what point do you think the youths reach that peak? Because for a long time, analysts in the political atmosphere has been saying youths are docile. In fact, it came to mind that even the president of the country at the time went abroad and said our Nigerian youth are lazy. And a lot of people believe that our youths are known for negative activities like Yahoo, like 419, and some other social vices. So at what time do you think it came to climax for the youths to take their future in their hand, as it were?
Well, I want to believe, or I want to be inclined to say that the realization came shortly after the last lockdown. And before then, actually, there has been what I want to call bottled up anger amongst the youth. And unfortunately for the current government, when it came into being, I stand to be corrected. I've not seen any kind of government that enjoys this kind of goodwill from the people. So it started on a very good foundation. But along the line, owing to several factors, all the kind of goodwill it has, so they mismanaged it. Then the realization, as you said, came during the lockdown, when people expected government to be closer to the people, and when people expected succor from government, and which never came anyway. And to make matters even worse, we now get to hear about people in government saying they've spent so much on this, on that, on palliative, on so many things, and nothing came to the people. But prior to that, if I want to rely on statistics that came from the National Bureau of Statistics regarding employment and unemployment indices in the country, which has greatly not favored the youth in terms of the demographic makeup, because essentially many people have lost their job. You remember that a few years ago we had stories of people committing suicide.
Yeah, that was almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah, because they've been unable to meet their basic needs in life. So the realization came around that time, and possibly the youth now felt that, come on, we have all it takes for us to, fight for government. Or, the initial stage now, from what we are getting from the organizers, is to make government accountable. And when that fails, maybe we might have an opportunity to have a kind of fresh thinking in the way we govern ourselves. When these youth, fight for government, fight to be in government, to see how they can make, their talent and intellectual count in how to return the country back to the path of sanity.
But sir, before we go deeper into the cause of this revolution and vis-a-vis other, what can I call it, antecedents and the precedences, sir, can't we look at it like this? Are you not afraid that as at the 10th day today, which is 19th of October, 2020, we're having other voices? People are saying, oh, member of the LGBT community, that is those who believe in the homosexualism and all that, who have a different sexual orientation, are joining the League of Protesters. And we also have people also believe that members of the Yahoo boys, youths that believe in doing negative things to earn their living, then even if care is not taken, some touts and some other faceless people, even those that we knew were supporters of SARS, some of them are trying to, if I want to say it, Bori Wale, are you not disturbed that this struggle could be polluted at this junction, sir, if there is no definite demand?
Well, there have been definite demands, and one of the cardinal points, one of the cardinal issues that have been raised has to do with the operation of a special unit in the police force, which is SARS. Then they are very focused. I mean, they have a litany of demands that they want to make of government, which they are trying to, but this is just one of it, and they believe, and so far, I want to believe they are actually touching on issues that affect the average Nigerian. And that is why they've been able to galvanize support around their advocacy. Then, as regards the question of whether the agitation will spiral into some areas where there might be a likely security breach of peace, I don't think it is going to end in that way.
How are you sure? Because tomorrow, on Tuesday or tomorrow, the president say I'm going to release out military. The military are saying they are bringing out Operation Crocodile Smile, sort of things. Are you not going to see situation whereby there's going to be kind of intimidation between the youth and the military, and it's going to be gone crossfire?
Well, so far what has gladdened my heart is that the organizers of this, well, it's not limited to some areas. It cuts across the country, even in the north, where this issue of SARS is not too prevalent. They've identified the issues in the north, which is banditry and kidnapping and general insecurity in the area. Well, that's the problem they have there. We have our own SARS here. So what we should be thankful for now is that for the first time, we now have a crop of youth who are well trained, who are knowledgeable, who are focused, and who are bringing some kind of approach that government itself is not able to, counter. And of course, when you say all manner of people will come in, we are all Nigerians.
What do you mean by well Nigerians, sir?
Well, if we have so many Yahoo boys everywhere and they are still roaming about, it's an indictment on the police itself. But what that does not mean that I'm condoning it or I'm supporting it and all that. So what I'm trying to say is for us to build a critical mass. So let us look at the issues that are very germane to our existence, collective existence. Let's champion them. Let's get the kind of change that we need. Once that is sorted out, everybody will find this level within the new order. So having this element within the shouldn't actually be the problem.
What you are saying is that we should mind the message, not the messengers, and we should also look critically at the points that have been observed. But if you look at Simon Kolawole yesterday, in this day, he said EndSARS, Nigerian stripping points. It was a question. If you look at it, he said EndSARS, Nigeria stripping points. And when I look at another blogger in the US, Adeola Fayehun, she said, this is the best time that at least Nigeria is finally having a revolution. And when you look at it vis-a-vis what publisher of Sahara Reporter tried to do last year, August, which she called revolution now, that the time is right for a revolution and all that. So, looking at Sahara Reporter's Omoyele Showore's dream, coincided with Simon Kolawole's editorial yesterday. Do you think this is Nigeria's stripping point, really?
Well, yes, but this time is going to be a generational, struggle. Why do I say so? There is general consensus amongst the youth that the future for us is now, not tomorrow, as the elites have always want them to believe. So there's a consensus amongst them. So if it's the tipping point that will ensure generational power shift, it's okay. Because like I said in the opening remarks, we need fresh thinking in the way this country is run. And that there might be any kind of breach of security, I don't think so. Because I want to be inclined to think that the people who are putting this thing together are very knowledgeable youths who have painstakingly planned all this, and that so far so good because of the intellectual work they put into this advocacy. It's been very difficult for government to really, to really match them. Unfortunately, I want to assume that the last card the government will play is the army. And why I said these youths are very knowledgeable is that they have a clear, of course, Nigeria has a litany or so many issues to contend with. But they just identified the ones that are very germane to everybody, which directly or indirectly, everybody must have suffered. Then they galvanize people around that issue, and that, of course, they've been able to build the right critical mass for them to champion it. And so far, so good. At the risk of sounding very supportive of what they've been doing, I think they've conducted themselves very well. We've seen occasion whereby they've been very peaceful. They've been, we are beginning to feel more, proud to be Nigerians with the way they've organized themselves. They carry Nigerian flag. They've not been going about, doing on things that are very untoward towards their fellow citizens, even though there might be cases of people but they are trying to try to impede people's movement from one place or the other. Well, unfortunately, if that is the crime, other Nigerians will pay for a good Nigeria. I'm sorry, but something has to give for us to have the kind of country we have. Then the tipping point, yes, but for the first time, I'm happy that the issues are not the usual pedestrian, mundane issues that divide us along religious, ethnic, and all other, consideration. But this one has to do with what I call generational power shift between the youth and the elderly.
But sir, looking at it critically as a political writer, sir, do you really think that the special anti-robbery squad of the police, those men, do you think they were really evil in their dispensation of duties? I mean, in the situation whereby police carry on unmarked vehicle, a Sienna, and they go around town and they pick people at random because of their dress sense or because of their outward look and all that, and you don't know where they take them to, and when the person is released from the fray, it comes to tell you that, oh, they tortured me and they took me to my ATM and they took all sort of amount of money, they gagged me, they beat me, they intimidate me and all that. Do you think there should be really a justice? Because some people even say, oh, let there be another brutal panel, let people come out and recall their encounter with these men. So do you think they were really wicked?
Well, I wasn't too young when, sometimes in 1984, I think I was in my teens then, between the ages of 14 and 15, when I think he was then an assistant commissioner of police who later retired as an AIG, Fulani Kwajafa, suggested the need for a special unit specifically to combat armed robbery. And interestingly, the current president was then the military head of state then, who granted the request. Of course, you remember in the 70s and the 80s, Nigeria was riddled with armed robbery, virtually in all parts of the country and all that. So the thinking then was that a unit ought to be created outside the mainstream police, whose duty will be specifically to combat armed robbery, essentially. And it was created, led by Kwajafa himself. Some other officers came after him. And I want to believe that at inception, they did very well. They did very well. They were doing a lot. Later, this man who later became IG was in charge, Gambo. Alaji Gambo and all that. So they were doing excellently well until I wouldn't know why and how they derailed. But I have had an encounter, personal one, no, not directly, indirectly. I've seen these boys work, and I wonder, because when you say you are an anti-robbery squad, what is your business with somebody doing Yahoo? What is your business with somebody who is not properly clad and whatever? Then again, some people, because of another problem within the police force, the recruitment process, found their way there, and later ultimately they believe it was just, or the unit is just an opportunity to make money and all that. I think these are some of the issues that going forward in trying to bring another security, whatever. These are some of the issues to look. The recruitment, then give them a clear-cut rules of engagement.
But looking at it on the second day of this protest, I think it was on the third day actually, when the current IG of police, M.A. Adamu, decided to create what he calls SWATS. How did you feel? A lot of Nigerians felt that was too it was the second day really that it was impulsive, that maybe he has taken this job on impulse and it was at the wrong time. But do you feel the same as the majority opinion, sir?
I had the opportunity of talking to some of my friends who are in the police. SWAT is not a new outfit. It's been there.
Are you sure, sir?
I'm very sure.
I'm not aware, sir.
I'm sure. I'm sure. What there is one idea that has been mooted long time ago, and essentially what they wanted to do with it is to combat armed banditry and robbery. So I want to believe that maybe they drag foot, so they've not done much to bring it into whatever. I think that was the kind of message he was trying to, at the risk of voting brief for the IG, I think that was the message he was trying to put across.
What's the difference between SWAT and SARS?
Well, if you want to look at the model that they want to copy overseas, what the agents, what the unit does is to storm crime area, then rescue people who might be trapped and arrest the culprit. So it's not new to us. I remember there was this SWAT, something we used to watch in the 80s, American SWAT and all that. So they have it all across the country. But of course, when you have a deficit in trust, especially from the people to those in government, people will always be very cynical, skeptical of any intention of government. I think that is what the government should work towards, getting the deficit. And I'm happy to say that since the agitation began, the protesters have been able to win the police to their side. Because, for instance, going forward, after engagement with the people, after the agitation, the IG now felt that there was need for the police echelon, top echelon, or the police hierarchy, as the case may be, to look at several issues around policing in terms of their welfare, in terms of their salary, in terms of their emolument, and all others. So that has helped the protesters to win the police to themselves, and they've been so cooperative and friendly.
But sir,
one of them, between the two of them.
Sir, but let's be very frank. Yeah, you are a Nigerian, I'm a Nigerian. Severally, I've used police to effect arrests. 2018, even up to this year, we've engaged, and you discover that there is no station you go to. If you are not motivating in terms of finance, there is no reaction. They tell you their problem. Even you want to arrest some robbers the other day somewhere, some criminals in a friend's house, and we have to go, and the police tell you are going to arrange the korope or the keke marwa, you're going to pay for this, you're going to pay for that, you're going to pay. The other time I used police in Songwater to arrest some people smoking in my father's house in the estate there, and there was a lot of things I heard that I didn't want to hear. So talking about their remuneration, what do you think is the problem when you look at the police and you look at the motivational aspect of the force? An average policeman is highly demotivated. So do you think that's...
I think where we got it wrong initially, I want to be in the middle in this argument. I think where we got it wrong was having a central unified police. And why do I say so? I don't think it will be administratively convenient for us to have a central police for a country of almost 200 million people.
Can you analyze that? Can you break it down, sir?
Okay, I can break it down because I'm using some yardstick and some indices. Policing is supposed to be a communal or community-based effort. So for me to effectively police very well my area,
let's say Akowanjo, or let's say what's the biggest local government?
Let's even use southwestern Nigeria as an example. We have a different unique culture and idiosyncrasies, while the north has its own. I don't think it will make any effective sense if you say, okay, for instance, if I'm recruited, I'm from Ilesha, and you carry me to a far-flung place like Maiduguri. I'm a Christian. There are Muslims there. So that again has disadvantaged effective policing.
Cultural
differences. Then again, because of the cost of, because it's one issue the government has been shying away from, the cost of policing is very high. And of course, that's why state has to set up this intervention, scheme, security trust fund and all that. But that is one issue. The issue of culture, then the issue of funding. And that is one of the reasons why Nigeria is one of the countries that is grossly under-policed. Because we have a police force of, the strength is about 350-something thousand or thereabout to police 200.
This fund is very unfortunate.
And again, even the one we have, we are not maintaining very well. So I have my fears though. I want to be inclined to go along with those who said that we should have state police. And that maybe we have to put some, safeguards that will ensure that those processes are not abused by local political leaders. Because people who argue against it don't say that it's not good. But when you look at a situation whereby the governor will say he's conducting election in all the local governments of the state and the party wins every seat, councillorship and chairman. So when you now invest such people with state police, of course, your guesses will be as good as mine as to what they will do with such. But essentially, we really need I don't really have a kind of idea as to how we can do it because of the funding problem, then the cultural issues, then I think those are essentially the problem the police are. But we really need a new conversation on the kind of policing we want in this country.
Talking about the new conversation, before I even go to the issue of Amotekun, one of the potent arguments that these EndSARS protesters are talking about is the issue of bad governance. You look at the Senate, how much a senator is earning per month. You go to the Senate complex in Abuja, you see automobiles, expensive cars, the list maybe 10 million, 15 million, and you ask why. You go to the National Assembly, the honorables there too, they live a very auspicious lifestyle, and it does not reflect. Then you are not talking about minimum wage for ordinary civil servants. And now minimum wage is 30,000. And even a bag of rice, the last one I bought is 27,500 naira bag of rice. So what you see is happening around this. Do you think politics or democracy has not been too nice to us?
Well, I put side by side with military rule, I will go for democratic rule. I think what we should be doing more in this country is voter education and voter awareness. There was a time I suggested that for anybody to be able to cast his vote in any election, such person must be a proven taxpayer. What do I mean? If I pay my tax very well, if we have very effective tax administrative regime, and I know that I pay through my nose for my society, when election comes, I will take more than passing interest in knowing those who govern me. I think that is where we have to start. Then two, unfortunately for Nigeria, at the advent of democracy in 1999, those who ordinarily ought to go into politics were skeptical, so they stayed behind. So we have all manner of criminals who came in. So by the time the realization came that democracy has come to stay, unfortunately for us, these criminal elements have entrenched themselves. So for us to now do away with them will take time. Then the case of National Assembly as it is, if you really ask me, you see when 2 plus 2 will always give you 4. I wasn't too young then to know that in the Second Republic, I wasn't born in the First Republic, so I won't be able to say what actually obtained. Of course, I later in life saw some of evidences to suggest that in those days we have political parties that were based on ideology. When you said UPN, you knew what UPN stood for. When you said MPN, you knew what MPN stood for. Then if you are a member of a political party, that made you a financial member. So everybody knew his role within the political setup. So everybody subscribed to the ideas of all these parties. Unfortunately, we don't have political parties in Nigeria. What we have are mere platform with which people get into power.
Maybe adventurous platform.
Adventurous platform. That's why it's always very easy for somebody to be in APC in the morning before 12 noon, the man is in PDP and all that, shamelessly and all that. It was always very difficult then, because for you to subscribe to a party, you must believe in its ideal, you must be a financial member. And I have one or two relatives then, my big uncles, who are, okay, let's use the case of Alhaji Jakonde as an example that everybody can see.
Former governor of Lagos said that one of the best tell that statement.
He will ever remain one of the best compared to the
Presence
characters we have, jumping up and down now. In those days, if it were to be now, somebody like Alhaji Jakonde wouldn't have been governor. Why? Because in those days, there were parties, and they were parties rooted in ideology. And everybody knew that UPN was a progressive socialist party. MPN was more like a conservative party and all that. So we knew where to place everyone. So in those days, if you are a member of a political party, you don't really need to spend much to get into power. They will just notice you in your area. We like Asabe. He's a very good boy. He's a journalist. He's been working. He lives with us here. We know the father. The father was, this and that. Then the party will invite you, sponsor you, without you even spending a dime. Then when you win your election into, let's say, House of Assembly, in the case of Alhaji Jakonde, when he became governor, they gave them specific manifesto to implement in government. So in those days, the parties were more superior to the government. It was the party that controlled the government, because they usually campaign on some manifestos which will now be encoded in their, plan of action, which they will give to those in power. For instance, let's assume you are elected within this area. They will say, okay, Asabe, come. The problem we have is electricity, road, and drainage. They're giving you specific terms what or the issues you go and champion when you get there. So you won't just go to Alausa and sit back when they are discussing issues of drainage. Obviously, you tell them that of course the people in Alakuko needs drainage. Then if you are out of about 20 streets, you are able to attract about 7. That would be a scorecard for you to come back, for you to do some. But we don't have that kind of system. Now, one character will just go from nowhere, no visible address, no visible means of livelihood, bring money, then buy his way into government. So so to them, it's a mercantile approach to politics. Let me get into politics. It's more like an investment. Spending 500 million naira to be a member of House of Reps. I have to recoup my money, then steal a lot for myself, then steal again to come back. So that is so when you have that kind of situation, there won't be any kind of development, and that is what we have.
So, talking about political parties with orientation, I'm so surprised the way you analyze, especially the Second Republic, because maybe some of us were a generation that followed yours generation. We are the generation of the last set of the 70s. But you talked about
the mic generation. Yours is the Sorosuke generation.
So you see, you talk about a party having a manifesto and using that manifesto as a guiding pad for the officer that is going to represent a locality, either in the House of Rep or as a gubernatorial aspirant, or even as a president. But today now, how do you define the era where a godfather gives 5 people millions, this one 25, this one 30 million, this one 40 million, then eventually they will now say, Kasumu lo nawo yen dada, owo ton fun, o na dada, o la ma lo. The era of godfather. And you are I know you are around when you saw what happened in Edo State, how a godfather was brought from a high horse down to the floor, and his face was smashed to the floor, and what is going on? What is the difference between that era and the era of Godfather, whereby Godfathers are now in charge, they're the one that dictate? Even the last time in Lagos, a governor who worked hard, it was obvious that he gave us 3 Jubilee bridges and gave us 22 inner roads, and they said he couldn't go because of a Godfather. So what are the differences between that time and now, sir? Can you analyze?
The difference simply has to do with the level of voter education.
Still back to voter education.
Voter education, because then people knew what they wanted and they went for what they wanted. But now people don't actually draw the nexus between voting and how voting will affect them, at least in the next 4 years, and some other things. I think the conversation has to do more with how to educate our people. The godfathers are just individuals now, and they have just one vote.
But they have plenty money, and they have. It appears that they have the power of the dollars and the pound sterling.
But we've seen some cases where they spend money and the godfather lost. You made reference to Edo State now. So what we essentially need is voter education.
Voter education.
Yeah, and it's very saddening to know that. Let's use Lagos State as an example. From INEC register, we have 5 million registrants, people who have registered in their list. So when the election comes, barely 900,000 people vote. What does that suggest to you? Compared to Kano, where almost 5 million people will come out and vote.
But a lot of people will say in Kano, it's not just people that vote, that we have spider, we have chicken, we have goats, and we even have small birds.
No. I've heard of, well, what you can say is that we have juvenile, whatever. But let's give it to them. When election comes, they understand better, that they know what that means to them compared to us here. So what we have to be doing is voter education, and it's part of what these children are doing to really reawaken Nigeria. Some people will just get the voters card and sit at home, that they will say they have it in case they have any issues with government and they demand for it. That's just, but they won't see the need for them to come out and, identify issues and champion the issues and vote along such issues. So those are the problems we are having.
If I go back to the protester and the history of revolution, what is the role of vote buying? You saw Ekiti 2 years ago, amount of money splashed between PDP and APC. And it started in Ondo State, where they started the Diboko Sebe anthem. Diboko Sebe was that people were hungry. They were so hungry, and on the day of voting, they were giving them 5,000, telling them go and buy tomato, tatashe, and coca fish, and ewedu, and cook good soup, and eat amala, just for 1 day, and survive for 4 years. Now, Diboko Rally also came up in Ekiti. Then, I don't know the Dibo, something that happened in Osun State, there was harassment and all that. So what is the issue of vote buying? How do we emasculate that?
One, unfortunately, in this part of the world, the people have been displaced economically. Coupled with the fact that they have little knowledge about issues of voter education. So, and again, there's a kind of gulf or division between the people in the officialdom and the citizen. It is us and them. And they will, even if you vote, they won't come to us. And the people are being traumatized economically and dislocated economically. So when opportunity comes for them, the contract between them is give me money, let me vote for you. We know that nothing will come out of this voting. So let me just survive for those few days and collect. So, like I said, this is where conversation has to go.
But that's sad.
Very, very sad. Especially in the Southwest, it's something nobody should be very happy about. It's something that, because to me, if you give me money to vote for you, it's an insult. You are basically telling me that I don't know what I want, or I'm just a dunce who can be purchased and
or an item of passion or item of purpose
and all that. So when you have that kind of situation, and when you look at Southwest from all indices, economic, social, when I mean social, I'm talking about health and education and whatever, we've really gone down. We've really gone down because rather than really face issues that affect us as common people, I'm sorry to want to be clannish, because this is where I reside and this is where my passion is. So rather than really look at issues that are developmental, we are busy politicking and all that. And the little we'll be making for ourselves, we are doing it for ourselves, not for the common good. The kind of things we are used to when we were growing up. When a certain party will win the region and we have issues of regional integration. We were first in education before, but I doubt if we are now. Most of the states in the Southeast have, overtaken us. So these are some of the issues we should really, really look at. And everybody who's any right-thinking person should be bothered, because the issue of vote buying is very, very serious. and is criminal.
Highly criminal indeed. So let me take you back to history. When you look at it now, the Arab Spring started in December 17, year 2010. I think it started in Turkey, really. Tunisia. Tunisia, after a vendor was said to have been maltreated or burnt and all that. Okay, now, it started December 17, and that happened to be the birthday of our President Muhammadu Buhari. And when you look at, I think it was 1789, the French Revolution, it also started on the basis of bread and butter. Now, recently now, you saw what happened in Nigeria after the lockdown. Due to the coronavirus, global lockdown, the first thing that went up was tariff on power and petrol. Then, consequently, even people that wanted to travel, I have parents that were traveling and they were forced to pay 50,400 to do coronavirus test, which is going to expire in 3 days. Everything went skyrocketed, and before we knew it, bread that we used to buy for 200 became 350, 400. Even to eat bread, even gari, it has become so very expensive. Sir, is there any correlation? Can you give us a background of how it happened in French and some other revolution? And do you think it has a smell on what is happening presently in Nigeria? And can it ever happen in Nigeria, sir?
When you talk of revolution, unfortunately, people usually have this notion that revolution are usually violent. No. When you talk about revolution, essentially what we are saying is people coming together to look for ways of, rejigging a society towards the path of progress and development. So in some cases, it could be very bloody and aggressive. In some cases, the revolution might just be taking place and nobody might, be aware, but not until that reckoning comes that, a lot is happening here and there for people to actually see. Then you made the allusion to the French Revolution. I want to see a kind of correlation between what is happening now and the French. Few months ago, I had the opportunity of engaging some of my friends. And the talking point, I never even knew that all these EndSARS or things like that will come. So they told me pointedly that the government has been so rudderless and has lacked focus and is not too responsive to the people, and that they are so frustrated that nothing good will come out of this government, and that the people themselves are resigned to fate, and the possibility of having a revolution is new. And I said no. No, in the sense that I tried to draw a kind of parallel between the Nigerian personality and the French personality, and I came to that conclusion. I came to that conclusion that they are very similar. If you had the opportunity of being to France or any of its colonies, they are like Nigerians. All they want is that basic things of life. Don't disturb them. Just give them. They are not asking for too much. Electricity, water, job, and whatever. So if you deny them, the little you give them, they take. But those kind of society are very dangerous compared to societies that we always fight for, that we always have one reason or the other to fight for anything that they believe are
aggressive societies
and others. And I said that by the time it will come, the form it will take. But I thank God that it is there, whether we like it or not.
Are you predicting them, or do you have an insight that is going to happen, or a premonition? What do you mean?
I wouldn't say I was predicting, but I had this intuition then that it will happen. And that my belief then was that we are a people very unique. We take anything that is thrown at us. But the day you talk the core of our existence, what do I mean by the core? The real reason for existence, maybe petrol, maybe food and whatever, then we might see a spike, and that which we are seeing now. And that you talked about the French Revolution. The French took so many things from the monarchy. The monarchy was doing all it could to them in terms of trying to suppress them and whatever. Then one day King Louis XVI increased the price of bread, and there was riot all over spontaneously. And unlike this one, they were just going into where the nobility and the elite, bringing them out and guillotine them and all that. We've not gone to that stage. I pray we don't get to that stage. And I pray that government does not drag us to get to that place, because there's a lot of bottled up anger here. So I knew we'll come to this state, but I'm happy we are there. But I'm happy in the sense that it's been largely peaceful and intellectual.
Are you saying that the French Revolution of that era was not intellectually vast or intellectually inclined?
It was more of a mob action.
Okay, mob action.
We have philosophers, we have thinkers who lived in that era. Unfortunately, some of them became victims of the mob actions. And that was why one of the greatest thinkers of that time, Rousseau, said, what is a mob? A sea of head without brain. So thank God that we have people who are intellectual directing the debate. The only dilemma for government is that they are finding it difficult to know who the real leaders are to talk to. And I don't pray they get to see the real leaders, because if they do, they will bribe them away from doing things. Because as a Nigerian citizen, a patriotic one who want the genuine progress of this country, I believe we need fresh thinking in this country, which I want to assume, or I want to be inclined to believe that this youth will give us.
Coming out from your last question, sir, about the youths and the rule of engagement, sir, you will notice that I think it was also the third day, sir, that the IG called, and out of panic, they said they want to talk to the youth, the head of the youth. The first instance was that DCP Frank Umba, who is the spokesman of the police, said he wanted to talk to the Malians through what's his name, Naira Marley. And people said, oh, Naira Marley, it doesn't mean that Naira Marley is so powerful and could be the face of the youth. The next thing we saw in another press conference, we went global, we went circulating all over, was the IG of police with one David Adeleke, the musician that called himself Davido. I know David is popular, I know Davido is popular, he's famous and all that. But I want to ask you that in a country where we have intellectual young people like Omoyele Sowore of Sahara Reporters, Chris Moghalu, I mean, okay, he's in his 40s. Even Fela Durotoye, the entrepreneur, and we have Aisha Yesufu, the activist. We have even Segun Awosonya, the guy who started EndSARS, one of the bundle of intellectualism that I respect so much. Yes, I've not watched him. I've not met him, but I've watched him on YouTube, and I see him as a very intellectual person. Why do you think the Inspector General of Police and people in government will be calling Naira Marley or Davido? Is that not an insult to the intelligence of the
to look at that situation, one has to look at it within the prism of how government perceive the Nigerian youth, and what kind of society drives, what kind of issue drive the Nigerian society. In answering that, Nigeria is a materialistic country. What people want to know about you is how wealthy you are, the kind of material possession you have. Whether you are a numbskull, nobody cares. So that is the kind of people we are. Then two is that what kind of role model are we creating? For instance, the other time, the man in Ogun State, what's his name?
The governor Dakwabe
rewarded the guy Lekon, who bought the Big Brother show with 5 million naira apartment, then made him the ambassador of the youth. Unfortunately, the best graduating student in Ogun State, how much was he giving? 50,000?
No, 10,000 naira.
10,000 naira. So that goes a lot to tell you the kind of premium these administrators place on the youth.
But it doesn't mean that politicians are always looking for crowd rather than intellect.
Yes, what they are looking for is people who will gather that vote for them, not people who will bring that intellectual, approach or depth into governance. So it's very sad. And it's reflected in the way we manage our youth.
If you are the Inspector General of Police, will you have also engaged Davido or Naira Marley?
Well, that is not too. The engagement cannot be deemed to be too bad. Well, it could, maybe for the purpose of dousing tension, fine. Why not taking anything away from my borough? Because I'm a little bit close to the family. Maybe they wanted him to use his influence as an influencer to douse it for them. I think that is where it should end. Not for them to want to sit him down, or somebody like Naira Marley to say they want to get any kind of intellectual input from them. Of course, it's very obvious that they won't get that.
But we have Segun Awosanya, we have Fela Durotoye, we have Chris Moghalu, we have Aisha Yesufu, we have Omoyele Sowore, and some other intellectually aspiring young people who can think.
Like I said, the attitude to governance. Maybe some people in the officialdom will see them as the troublesome people. Of course, they won't come to the realization that whether they like it or not, those are the future. Then that goes to tell us more about the leadership recruitment process in Nigeria. What kind of leaders are we recruiting? And what are the basis or yardstick for recruiting them? Is it for the common good of the people or for the common good of the godfathers and the people in government? Let's use Lagos State as an example. Of course, everybody is always very quick to use Lagos as the example. Would you tell me that the man who is the speaker there is perhaps the best that legislative house can?
So it's an embarrassment for mentioning the speaker of Lagos. You just nearly spoiled this interview.
Show you the
it's an embarrassing, sir. What we are seeing now, it's annoying.
And of course, the man is a little bit above being a youth, and look at what he has done. So it's more like the attitude of government to youth development, then our leadership recruitment pattern is what is faulty. And until we get that right, we won't get. And that is what these children are clamoring for. Because when you look within their ranks, you see people who are professionals, architects, lawyers, doctors. And in one of the rallies, a lady gave birth to a baby. And one of the leaders of the protesters was the person who delivered her of that baby. And it goes to show you the quality of the people involved. Those are the people government should talk to, not well, the video and the likes might be good for government as a way of dousing tension, but if they are looking for the lasting solution to the problem, they have to look somewhere else. That's my take.
But sir, let me ask you this question, and it's going to be a funny one because you're a political writer. I've known you for like 20 years now, writing politics and analyzing and even writing editorials at times. Sir, what is the difference between the progressive of the Awolowo era and the progressive of this era? Is there any correlation? Because a lot of people will come and tell you that, oh, this man is an Awolowo. They tell you we are Awolowo Niwa, and they put on caps that show some kind of rollabout and all that. But how can we?
The difference is clear. You claim to be a progressive. What is deliverables is what we should be talking about now. Okay, let's use Jakonde that we all know about. Jakonde made his mark within his 4 years in office, and the landmarks are there for people to see. I am not ashamed, I'm even proud to say that I'm one of Jakonde's legacy, because he gave us free education. That is progressivism. Whether what we have today is like that, well, the people will judge. But if you really ask me, no. So what happened initially, I don't really like to say what I want to say, but I have to say it.
You have to say it because we need orientation. We are in the era of Sorosoke now, and if you are not Sorosile, you are not making your voice. It's not good, sir.
Okay, I will Sorosoke. Since you
have to be bold, sir, please.
I have to. I should be bold.
You have to speak up.
What we have is unfortunately a cream of rascals. Hijacked that idea, arrogated it to themselves. Now believe that they are the custodian of that philosophy and ideology. But when they got all these things, they began to do some other things that are far, away from what those Baba stood for in those days. That's my honest appraisal of what they've done so far. Because when you consider the amount of money, let's use Lagos State, at the disposal of successive governors in Lagos State, give just a little amount of such to Alhaji Jakonde, the likes of Jakonde, Alhaji Hamzat, all of them, when they were selfless. Give a quantum of this amount to them, I want to say that Lagos will become another Dubai. So, of course, everybody can see. Because they've been in office for the past 20 years. Lagos has become a glorified slum. And the issue of transportation, which ordinarily should be the cardinal focus of any serious government in a metropolitan, city like Lagos, has been, abdicated. The only thing they've been doing is that rail line from Okokomaiko to CMS. They've been doing it for the past, when is January to make it 13 years. And I want to assume it's just, I think it's about 20-something kilometers. Then Ethiopia, that came after, that did his own after Addis Ababa, that did his own after Lagos. The cost is even half of what they are doing for this 23, and they did 50-something kilometers. They finished it 2 years after we began our own. So there is there for everybody to see.
So the progressiveness of the progressive can be viewed from what is on ground?
From the deliverables. From the I remember vividly well that when Alhaji Jakonde was campaigning for his second time, he didn't print any poster and he won landslide.
Just like that?
Yeah. Everybody came out en masse to vote for Alhaji.
His product spoke for him.
Oh, everybody saw it. Look at the housing estate in Mero now. You could picture what Mero was when he came to build the housing estate there.
In fact, yes, the other day I drove through that place and were
very large and expansive. Go to that estate, very large. Very large. Okay, now ask yourself, what estate that these characters are building? Can anybody buy them?
In fact, the one in Ogba is even empty. 70% is empty.
I'm even surprised that 30% of it is occupied.
No, sir. 30% are occupied, are bought by people abroad who they are looking for tenants, and the rent is even high. So they just say Bamira, then maybe retire PAMSEC according to investigation. They even paid advance, people in government. So you see a whole lot of level of sabotage. They build it and they give it to themselves.
What do you expect? My late mom owned a flat in Isolo. I remember when we went to go and buy the flat, my mother was working with PZ then. You didn't need to know anybody. When we got to Ilupeju, they did the ballot and she won. And she didn't pay in cash. What they requested her to do was to give her her account number and get a kind of commitment from her employer. So they were deducting the money from her salary. And we still enjoy the privilege of the house till tomorrow.
How are we going to get these lost good times back?
Like I said, when everybody is involved, when everybody knows that at every election cycle, their life depends on it, at least the 4 years of their next existence depends on it, then we should de-emphasize vote buying. When that is done, quality people will come into government.
Sir, taking away from revolution now, this revolution, these protesters, looking at them, looking at the way it is going, do you think we're going to get a definite progress at the end of the day? Because everybody is so, Mr. President should come and address them, even though Mr. Vice President have said sorry.
We've gone beyond the president addressing anybody. What these youth want are concrete action plans that are verifiable. Okay, you said you are doing SWATS. Engage these people. Let there be stakeholder engagement. Then ask them for whatever thing they want. Then get them to do a kind of binding into what your government is doing. All this we abate. In its deficit of trust on the part of the people towards the government. Then the people themselves are very clear as to what they want. And what do they want? They want fresh thinking, then fresh approach to governance.
Before we round up, let me take you to critical issues. A lot of analysts have also agreed that these young people are fighting for their own immediate business environment. Like I said the other time, what I mean is that they say, okay, there are other concrete issues like paying. Okay, look at the issue of power now. You increase it, just look to 200%. That maybe some of them are not started paying rent, talk less of paying for power. That issues of power are so very germane, because if there is light, as we are doing this interview now, the generator is on. You can see that we've had low, up, come, even at the time you are even sweating. It shows that you are on your generator here right now. Issue of power, whereby the discos bought, President Jonathan sold the disco, the unbundled PSN and sold it to capitalists who have no emotion, who have no social tendencies, especially emotion side of them is dead. And today, the bill they bring to your house, 2-bedroom flat, they bring 58,000. Even at times, they even bring up to 72,000. And there is a deliberate action not to meter anybody so that they can keep exploiting the money. So issues like this, don't you think they are very germane and should be tackled promptly in this protest?
Like I said, they have a litany of issues that they want to address. And that maybe they've been so clever enough to look at one issue that they believe touch on the core existence of the people to mobilize them as well. I think I have a friend or two, or 1 or 2 or 3 aburos who are part of this thing, who have actually told me that they have a lot of issues, that when they are through with this, they will go to electricity from there, the whole gamut of governance, to see how they can make sure that we reduce the cost and that the people benefit more from government. I think these are some of the issues that are in the burner, but let us see how things go from tomorrow when they said they will deploy the police. But I want to... The army, rather. I want to warn the president that it's ill-advised and foolhardy to want to believe that we'll be using the same method of the 1970s to these youth who are... who are, mobile and sway when it comes to technology. I stand to be corrected. These boys are 10 steps ahead of government. And the issue of deployment of soldiers will backfire on the government itself if the government run away from the main issues that are being, that these people are clamoring for.
So, before running up, if you have a seat with President Muhammadu Buhari now, you, as someone on this side, what are you going to tell the president if you have to meet him one-on-one? What is going to be your honest advice for him if there's to be a closed-door meeting between you and him?
That he should be a statesman and be father to all. That he should be a statesman, be a father to all, then get quality people around him to move the country forward. Those are the things I'll tell him. Because how do you expect, for instance, a whole region has been shut out of governance and you expect them not to cry? I mean the southeast. And when they now begin agitation for Biafra, you see them as dissidents, while you are actually telling them through your policies and your actions that they are alien in their country. Or how do you want to tell the youth who have been so, badly affected by your incompetence to come along with you when they usually, when from time to time they lose their job in droves? How do you want to tell people who are being killed by bandits that you mean well for them when you have all the opportunity to mobilize the armed forces and the police to do away with this banditry? Or how do you want to tell people who are traumatized by insurgency in the northeast, who are daily being killed, who are not secured, who are usually very afraid to go out, that your government means well for them? What do you want to tell the people in southern Kaduna that are daily being killed by people suspected to be of your ethnic group? What do you want to tell people in Zamfara who cannot go out to say their early morning Muslim prayers, who even when they do venture to go out, they are at the mercy of bandits? Or even in his home state of Katsina, where district heads are kidnapped randomly with reckless abandon. So these are some of the issues. He needs to really sit down, apply himself to the job. We voted you to become the president. You should know what it entails to become the president of a country. Then be a statesman. See Nigeria as your constituency, not part of Nigeria as your constituency. Then get quality people to run the country with you. Those are the 3 issues I'll tell you.
Olaolu, it's very interesting, but this is fantastic, really, and I'm very happy that you said this. But before we round up, really, let me make you to comment on the issue of social engineering. And you look at this protest, the way it's going now, you see that some churches are now bringing their head into the protest. I want you to put your thoughts on this, because you're a political scientist, and you look at churches like Redeem. Initially, it was Pastor Samademi and Pastor Tudi Bakari that were they were foresight. They had the foresight. They were fast enough to understand that this is a dynamic agitation and it has quality undertone. But now we saw Leke, the son of Adeboye, coming out yesterday, and we started seeing other people like one pastor, Johnson, is it Joshua or Johnson Suleiman? And you know, when you look at this kind of characters, even when you look at some churches whereby you buy a house as a member, and when you are leaving, you cannot take the house out, and a lot of other atmosphere of cheats. People are saying all sort of things about church, especially what's going on in the church. Do you think the church should also be blamed in this gamut of misgovernance? And for the church now to start showing his head, apart from people like Samade Emi who are very distinct, those are leader shepherd, and maybe Pastor Tunde Bakari, that's another leader shepherd. But what do you see to majority of all these people that are just rearing their head now trying to identify with a protest that is very distinct and different from any other protest?
Well, whether they identify with the protest or not, it depends on the protesters to welcome them or reject them. We've seen the protesters rejecting some people here and there.
Yeah, they rejected them to Lomon, Wasiu Ayinde, and even Yinka Ayefele in Ibadan.
Yeah.
And some other few people that want to, even Pasuma Ilan was rejected. Is it yesterday in Alausa? He was sent out because they said he also used SARS to intimidate youth and all that. A lot of people who assume the Maigo couldn't even make noise. He wanted to make noise, but they shot his trap. MC Lomo brought out food. They said he should keep his food. Yinka Ayefele was said to have given food in Ibadan. They said, please, we don't need your food and all that. And I think that is distinctive. So what do you say about all these men of God that are just trying to catch up?
Well, it's unfortunate that that happened. Before anybody get anything twisted, I have very, very solid Christian background, in the sense that my maternal grandfather was a very influential member of CAN in his days. He was a reverend gentleman who was the prelate of the African church. So whatever I want to say so as a Christian. Flowing from what you said, it's just unfortunate that Christianity has veered towards what it ought to be. I remember really well that growing up, there was so much discipline and morality in churches. The focus of the clergy then was how to direct the people towards the kingdom of God. But that has changed drastically now. Everybody is talking about miracle, breakthrough and all that. And again, that has had its own terrible effects on governance. Because rather than the church being an avenue for telling those in government to do what is right, it has become an avenue for encouraging deviant behavior, especially rascality in governance and all that. So when you now say that some churches are trying to come in and all that, I want to believe that the same kind of treatment that were meted to those who are rejected should do for them. So because I hope the religionists will forgive me. The damage that religion has done to this country is even cannot be quantified in terms of the way it has ensured the kind of dogma that we've had in the past, when people are not able to come out. Don't fight government. Anybody in government is ordained by God. Let us pray for him and all that.
Docility.
That has kept us so much docile and dogmatic. No wonder this new generation call us the off the mic generation. Masoro, don't talk and all that. But now we have people who are talking and all that. I don't believe they have any role. Rather, the kind of role I believe the religious bodies should have. When I meet some of the leaders of this protest, I'll tell them that it's just to pray. It's just to, and I hope that they will restrict it to what they did yesterday. We don't want any of these pastors there. And what they only came to do yesterday was to come and pray, the same way the Muslim prayed on Saturday, so as not to give it a kind of coloration.
On a last note, really, I wanted to also touch the issue of karma. Just 3 months ago, government came out with the Corporate and Allied Matter Act, and they said because majority of the churches don't have accountability. As I'm talking to you now, MFM in London is under suspension by the Charity Commission over issues of fraudulent acts. Bishop Oyedepo has his own crisis here and there. This is a bishop that styled himself as the richest pastor in Africa or in the one of them in the world.
That's my grandfather, who was the prelate of the African church, was only able to build a 3-bedroom flat.
But this bishop has money estate now.
He was in the clergy for about 30-something years. He barely, even the building was even completed by the children and grandchildren. And he was the prelate of the African church. If I mention his name, is somebody you know. So what are we actually saying? The damage that religion has done to Nigeria is very, you can't quantify it. Like I said, the sermon, the focus has shifted. Because in those days, you saw the clergy. I mean, there was this expression then that as poor as the church rat.
Yes.
The only thing the rat will eat in the church in those days was the Bible. But now, as fat as the church rat now and all that. So we really, that is one aspect that we have to really look at in going forward. So because then talking about karma that you mentioned, I think is a very good law. What actually arose was a suspicion, which might not be too unfounded. If government was actually, I support the law, I've read it. If government was actually serious, government would have carried the church along in the process of formulating the law. I think that was where the government got it wrong. But for me, it's a law that should be made. Because, why am I saying this? These churches are registered entities. So once you subscribe to be registered, of course you can't operate without being registered. Once you subscribe to the laws of the land recognizing you, then the land has should reserve the right to know how you function, and where you are found wanting, apply the right sanctions. So I support it, but where they got it wrong was the process of enacting the law. I think government can still go back and, call those who are unhappy within the law to engage them to see in specific times some aspect of the law that they don't really like. But it's a law that must be passed.
Lastly, sir, can you give an advice to young people, especially those in the country who are now agitating for a new shift in thinking and in governance and in social equality, and people that are abroad, people watching you in London, in America, in Canada, in Venezuela, in Germany, in our viewers all over the world? What do you think they should think about Nigeria, and what do you think Nigerians should think about themselves?
Well, this is the only country we know. This is the only country we were born into. This is our origin. This is our motherland. We should always strive to believe in it. We should always strive to contribute our individual quotas to its development, like what is being done. And by engaging more in its developmental processes. And that is what is happening now. And that when we form consensus on major issues that are affecting us, then draw up the right plan of action, then I believe the country will progress. It will be a country that will work for all, not for some.